I was going to give a lengthy rant that went like Richard Prism Power, and I was going to do a whole bit, but then I forgot what I was going to say, so welcome to Deep Space and Dragons. I am your inept host, Richard.
And I am your adept host, Karl.
Ooh, savage, I
I'm
like it.
also
Some nice twifty there.
But so yeah, we present Deep Space and Dragons. I think today we're going to talk about Sailormoon, the supposedly underrated pretty girl anime.
So first off, pretty girl anime? No. Magical girl anime is the genre. Like, you're just being a rube. I'm sorry. Like, what are you, a yokel? So first off, Sailor Moon was, in fact, the first anime I seen.
Ah.
At least that my brain can recollect. Because it was one of those things that, like, it aired slightly before Dragon Ball Z became a thing. It outpaced Dragon Ball Z, but was at a time slot I would be awake during. Because it was, like, after school lined up. So it was probably my first introduction to anime. Therefore, it almost gets as many nostalgia points as Dragon Ball Z, and everyone knows that nostalgia adds 3 to your Rotten Tomato score.
That is a fact.
Like, remember when we tried to rewatch the first few episodes of Power Rangers?
So bad.
So profoundly bad. So we're going to skip the What's New With You session, because that was last week's episode. Unless I air these in a random order, in which case you'll be like, but no, What's New With Karl? That's the only reason I listen to this. How dare you?
I do actually have something new.
Well, fine then. So half an hour wasn't enough for everything that was new with you? Jeez, who do you think you are? A chapter of World Trigger? Just a full half hour of exposition with no action? But please, what's new with you?
I actually deliberately, like, the mundane Calgary adventures were enough to fill in a half-hour section. But then I deliberately went and did something else to have 2 What's New sections.
I respect it. I respect the hustle.
And the What's New with me is actually, hopefully, our listeners still recall that I was attempting to build an artificial window. Where you take a light source LED and you shine it at a reflective satellite dish, and that'll collimate the rays, and then you're supposed to run that through a filter to get the right color profile and whatnot to make it seem like it's sunlight.
I definitely remembered you were doing that, but I could not tell you the characters in Mashal. Please continue.
Well, so I actually, like, so I had the LED. I needed to put the little. I always call them marionettes, but I think they're called Moret caps. They're like you screw them on to where you solder wires so that the soldering isn't just exposed.
That sounds... So, here's a little fun fact about me, listeners. For a while, I was technically a taper, which means I technically worked in construction. I am like... So picture in your mind's eye what an author looks like. Get that image deep in your mind. Picture the shoulder pad, little things in the sweater, the, like, hair and beard, and the inability to function. That is me. So despite the fact that technically I've done building maintenance, like, as a living, and technically I've done construction, I will never know if what Karl is talking about is bullshit. I won't. I don't have that skill set. My wisdom stat got so dumped out the window. I dumped dexterity as a stat. I have intelligence, my 3rd highest stat. I have durability, I'm really good at not dying. And I have charisma for days. That's it. Those are my skills. So, if they're called polycaps, if they're called soldering caps, you could even call them, like, falafel caps. I'm just going to nod and say sure.
But anyway, so I got the caps on my exposed wires, and I put the reflective tape on the satellite dish. But unfortunately, I don't know if my if the LED just wasn't quite in the right spot, or maybe the arm isn't long enough because I kind of expected it might cast its own shadow, but I was really hoping that it would collimate the rays and shoot them around the mount that I have for the LED. But I was not really impressed with the results, and I think, unfortunately, I'm going to have to call this project a bust because I just do not have the skill and wherewithal to actually figure out how to make it work more efficiently than what I have right now.
If it makes you feel better, in about 6 years when I have my doctorate, I'll be fully qualified to lie about how this was a success.
Well, I mean, even failure can be a success because you know it's a chance to learn from your mistakes and see where you can improve. But now I have this LED hooked up to shine into a satellite dish, and I'm not really sure what to do with it. Not really sure what to do with my prism powers.
So first off, amazing segue. Beautiful, 10 out of 10. Second, I know exactly what you do with this. Step 1, gift wrap. Or big enough gift bag if you can find one. Step 2, put a card on it that says, thank you for something, something, something. Step 3, give it to someone at random as a birthday present. Then, when you go to hand it to them, you drop it. You go, oh no! And then when they hook it up, you're like, I'm sorry, it didn't work. I had this working perfectly for you. But at least you still have the gift and the thought that counts. Boom. Flawless victory. Alright.
That would be a flawless victory.
Absolutely.
For sure.
So first, since we're going... I guess we're going to ask what's new with me.
Well, I mean, what is new with you, Richard? Do you have anything to add to this segment?
The most interesting thing I've done this week is download a new free-to-play game and then build Team Ruby in it and put the character download codes on my Twitter. That pretty accurately sums up...
Interesting.
That pretty accurately sums up who I am as a human being. Oh, I also made a one-page Dragon Ball Z tabletop RPG to rope people into playing later.
Ah, yeah. I did read that. I didn't actually... Well, no, I read it. Haven't really done anything with the knowledge yet, I guess.
Well, what we're going to do with that knowledge is at some point, I'm going to DM you a Dragon Ball Z game, we're going to play it, we're going to record it, people are going to be like, what? Because I only gave you the player rules. The DM rules are like top secret locked in here, and I'm not just going to make them up as I go along. So, that's pretty much been me.
You also made a Magical Girl one-page RPG. Which sounded pretty interesting.
That one I found, to be fair.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, I found that one. That one sounds fantastic. But for the record, I would love to run, even like rules as written D&D, a straight-up Magical Girl campaign would be amazing.
Well, so do you think those rules would accurately apply to Sailor Moon?
Similar, like, and I know rules exist, too. Like, I know we could find a Magical Girl RPG. I have complete faith in that. A while back, for a one-page D&D one-shot, I did come up with Magical Girl rules for D&D. And the premise is that your character is just a normally statted human civilian until you transform into your D&D class, and then it auto-equips your armor and clothing, and then we just Magical Girl with that.
Huh.
So you just walk around as regular Karl, and then go into Tuxedo Karl and gain your rogue levels and stats. You know, it'd be fantastic.
That would make sense.
And then it's like, oh no.
Yeah.
Have it take place in the modern D&D rules exist. Probably steal some Spelljammer rules while I'm at it. I could make this happen.
So, as you were saying, like, Sailor Moon is one of the first animes that you ever actually watched. But how much of your enjoyment out of it do you think is nostalgia?
So, what's interesting about Sailor Moon, and to a lesser extent the grossly superior Cardcaptors, was because of its structure. And I don't see this structure in anime so much anymore. It was structured very similar to a weekly cartoon. It was very villain of the week with an overarching plot arc, which meant if you saw an episode or two, you'd be fine. And each time episode would be, you have your characters doing their adventure, they fight a themed monster, they defeat a themed monster, the main plot happens a bit in the background, and then the show continues. For a younger brain, that's perfect. Because you do have events leading to something, but you don't get destroyed for missing something. But it's definitely more structured to a cartoon than a lengthy serialized manga or anime.
Oh, I see.
So the first season of Sailor Moon had a lot of highlights for me. And they redid it as a Sailor Moon Crystal, which I didn't like as much, weirdly. Which is funny, because it's less nostalgia and more... Some shows I just throw on in the background to amuse me while I live my life.
Right.
Like, for example, One Piece. If I have One Piece going in the background, I'm probably not also on my phone or playing a video game, right? Like, I could probably, like, doesn't require a ton of my focus.
Right.
Fullmetal Alchemist requires my entire attention span.
Mm-hmm.
So, for Sailor Moon, I would say, weirdly, it holds up better than Dragon Ball Z, partly because you can pick and choose what you watch so more efficiently. It's like you throw on a few episodes, and you could just skip an episode you don't like, and you don't lose anything from it.
Right.
So it's like you can grab the highlights easier because of how it's structured. And as for, like, the comedy and action, it's one of those shows I watch dubbed, and I watch more as a comedy. It's kind of like how original Dragon Ball, to me, holds up better than Dragon Ball Z, because the antics as an adult are more entertaining to me than the action, unless you're drawing One Punch Man and are somehow the most talented artist to live, writing a fart joke.
One of the YouTubers I occasionally watch, he did the math. The average mass of a fart compared to the mass of Saitama, the velocity at which he would have to fart is like 6 times the speed of light in order to be able to achieve the velocity to catch up with the car through his portal.
You see what just breaks me about that fight sequence is it was better at being Dragon Ball than Dragon Ball. Like, everyone talks about Dragon Ball like Vegeta did a punch that blew away everything except Jupiter's core and then kicked someone through the asteroid belt. That doesn't happen in Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball's actually really boring for the most part. That happened in One Punch Man. So, to loop back to our topic of Sailor Moon, it's like, yeah, most characters are like this pre-recorded transformation animation and the pre-recorded fireball attack. So the fight sequences aren't that interesting. But weirdly, the petty jabs and snipes across the chemistry of the cast is actually better than the show itself. Because they'll be like, ha. It's like, yeah, you're an idiotic meatball head with stupid hair and you're obese and you're an idiot. I'm like, ha, that's actually funny because that was so savage for no reason. Why are you like this? Or the talking cat being like, how are you our leader anyway? So, the sass of the show is actually more entertaining to me than the meat of the show, which is funny for where my tastes normally are for things.
Well, okay, when you call it sass, that kind of makes it seem like maybe you learned how to be sassy from Sailor Moon.
It's probably part of the mix that is my personality. And the thing about Sailor Moon is it went for like a solid 8 seasons over here. And like, I hit an age where people are like, yeah, let's make fun of him for watching Sailor Moon. I'm like, yeah, no, but it's still coming out and it's still pretty consistently good. Dragon Ball ended a while ago. It's dead. It's over. It's done. And the thing is, Dragon Ball had a larger episode count than Sailor Moon, but they also vomited those episodes at you because nothing happened.
Yeah, I mean, Dragon Ball Z got a lot worse, but it was kind of crazy how little happens in like Dragon Ball, where it's like the Tenkaichi Budokai tournaments or whatever. It'd be like a single episode would be one technique from Master Roshi, one technique from Goku, and that'd be the entire episode.
Yeah, so Sailor Moon had 200 episodes. Dragon Ball Z had 291. But Sailor Moon definitely told more story in that time. And the thing is, it did a couple things that were pretty repetitive, but it also had more character development. As we talked off stream for a bit, the current Dragon Ball Super manga, because of intellectual property and profit, no character can actually, that's important. If you can sell an action figure of them, you can't kill them.
Right.
And you can't fundamentally change them. I mean, we just put Goku in Fortnite, so Goku's not going to change as a person at this point. That would just, like, you can't do that. He's not allowed to develop. Like, they're not just going to let Goku grow a beard and get into micro-pilsners. Like, he can't change. Which is why, as you've mentioned a few times in our Dragon Ball episode, Goku became a caricature of himself.
Right.
Where Sailor Moon had the self-respect to end. I know that's a sassy comment, but, like, they're a full genre. And a lot of the shows in the magical girl genre have a lot of overlap, repetition, this and that. And Sailor Moon got close to reaching its, like, burning itself out. But I'm going to say that, like, each arc of its, like, 40 episodes, the characters are at least allowed to age and grow up a bit.
Right.
Where, like, a big plot point in Season 3 of Sailor Moon was their daughter coming back from the future, giving you a spoiler of what these characters' endings are. I'm like, oh, that's actually a fun dynamic. So it's like the character dynamics I found more interesting than the show.
Right.
Although it's also home to some of the most questionable censorship choices I've ever seen in my life. So the most iconic censorship in Sailor Moon is when they introduced a gay couple and thought it was just more appropriate to edit them to being cousins.
To edit them to being cousins?
Yeah. So you took these two very openly gay characters who were dating and had them enter a who loves each other more contest. This was literally it to, like, win a prize. And had them win as cousins. Because they wanted to be very clear that if you're a woman and a woman hits on you, that's not okay. But if your cousin does, yeah, it's fine. So it's like, out of all the choices you could make, really, this was the choice you decided to go with. This was the better choice. Is let's just have direct family members.
Speaking of characters, and I mean less about censorship, I guess. I don't know, but Queen Beryl is like the main antagonistic force of the series. But,
season 1.
Oh, season 1?
Oh yeah. So.
Okay.
So first off, the Sailor Moon manga and the show, the manga is way shorter. They villain of the week to stretch it out. The first season, the whole Queen Beryl plot arc, which is actually, like, I've had to, like, go back and go through it because it was actually surprisingly clever in retrospect.
Okay.
Was only the first season.
Huh.
And then they technically all die at the end of the season and then come back reincarnate as a cop-out ending. But I'm pretty sure in its original intended form, it was just going to wrap up that way, as like a brutal everyone dies ending, and they're just going to call it there. But then it was successful.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, like, apparently it ran from 1995 to 2000 on YTV in Canada.
Huh. And
then just kind of kept going for a while.
Well, I was just wondering about Queen Beryl because, like, some of the things that I've heard about her, it just seems like she's, like, far more powerful than she deserves to be for being a magical girl anime. Like, I don't know, I always kind of thought that everything was just, like, cutesy, fluffy fun.
Oh, no. So Sailor Moon had better fight sequences than the Saiyan Saga, probably. Just straight up.
Yeah?
Well, the thing about it is, so, much like Gurren Lagann, which is a weird pivot, but I'm making it, Sailor Moon's fight sequences were done for dramatic effect, not logical effect. So a villain's allowed to just blow up the planet because they're being powered by ethereal concepts. Like when your attack is powered by love, it can do as much damage as you think looks cool on the page.
Right.
But when you say, oh yeah, this uses 13% of my Tryon to create a 13mm explosive, you lose the ability to do that.
Yeah, okay.
Ugh, World Trigger's just like an abusive ex at this point. But anyway, so when we get to, like, you're probably thinking of the Beerus versus Sailor Galactica death battle. Sailor Moon had a kind of ridiculous power ramp, where the villains in later seasons are like, oh yeah, no, this person just can wipe out the universe, deal with it. But part of that is just simply anime power scaling when unchecked leads to ridiculous outcomes.
Right.
Because when you start with the fate of the world, and I've given this rant a few times, that the fate of the world is actually the worst stakes you can give something, because the world's not going to end.
Right.
So when you say the fate of the world's depending on this, But once you start having to power scale that, and the first person's objective is fate of the world, well, the next person has the fate of the galaxy, right? So you go fate of the world, fate of the solar system, fate of the galaxy, fate of the universe, fate of the multiverse. That's the curve that a weirdly large number of animes follow. So that's when you get like, oh yeah, this villain's so super powerful they wiped out all the galaxies, but they're defeated by a dagger to the chest because it's dramatic.
Yeah, okay.
Which, as much as I'm all about the death battles and them trying to do math, there's been a few times where I've made the statement, I'm like, oh yeah, well, this is a gag character, so why there's nothing to actually measure. Or maybe we should be measuring their average rather than their one-time feats. Because like, oh yeah, he did this, so he moves. It's like we saw a flash of light, so he moves 100 times the speed of light. I'm like, no, he dodged because of sound, but it showed a flash of light on the screen. Look how fast they normally move. Are they normally moving at light speed? Maybe use that as your measurement.
Yeah, Death Battle does take the
Everyone moves at
and
the speed of light in Death Battle. Just everyone.
It does seem that way.
And they're like, so that's how fast they move. Like, no. How about you measure how fast they move from that post to that post with a clock? Like, originally for the first Death Battle of Goku, they like literally measured how long they said it took him to run down Snake Way, and that was a reasonable measurement. But now they're like, yeah, they're reacting at the speed of light. Everyone is. I'm like, stop trying to physically print bigger numbers every episode. You're basically turning yourself into clickbait.
Yeah. I was gonna watch I thought I saw a Death Battle for Rita Repulsa versus Queen Beryl.
That sounds like a good one.
But then it was just a random like non Death Battle guy that was just like
Ugh.
the production quality was so much lower. I didn't end up actually watching the whole video, and I feel bad because like
it's
we're
not their
small
fault
content
that
creators.
they don't have a budget.
I was like, promote small content creators and smaller channels and stuff, but then it was like, do they even have the quality to go anywhere? I don't know.
But yeah, so to loop back to the topic of Sailor Moon. So one thing that you brought up before we did this video is most of your Sailor Moon experience comes from Sailor Moon video games. Which, weirdly, there just hasn't been one in like a decade or two. Like, there's like a bunch on the Super Nintendo. Peak side-scroll beat-em-up, a couple like patched RPGs you can play. But it's a franchise that it's like a staple. I'm not sure it was the first one of his style of show. Most likely not. But it's a very iconic Magical Girl series. But it got ripped off. Like, the ideas, which I don't even think originate here, have showed up so much that the series itself, despite being iconic, didn't actually get a lot of staying power. It's kind of like how Dot Hack got ripped off by literally every single I woke up in another world with video game logic thing that's ever been made. But it's not like Dot Hack's getting billions of dollars for that.
Yeah.
And it's like, they even skipped the whole video game part because that was harder. Now you just wake up in a generic fantasy world. Where I'm like, ugh, it's a shame that what I enjoy about Sailor Moon, and having recently went through a bunch of the manga, which is a much more condensed story, it's like, there's some solid stuff here. It is a very good casual romance with supernatural elements. Like, this is a solid series. But it's never going to, like, have another boom or bust. And also, I can think of, like, 4 or 5 things that took the same ideas and just did it better, because it's really not that hard. Because the base premise of Power Rangers but women is really not that hard. Because there is no actual difference between Sailor Moon and Power Rangers. I'm just making that statement straight up. Internet, come at me. Think about it. You got 5 color-coded characters that go through a transformation sequence to fight a villain of the week, slowly building up till they fight the generic evil witch at the end of the season. There's romantic subplots, and the strength of the series is completely based on your current cast chemistry. Just in Sailor Moon, they didn't summon the Zoids to walk in. But if they were to, we wouldn't even question it. Like, if you're watching a Magical Girl series, but they summon Zoids, yeah, sure, why not? That's a fine twist. Pretty sure that show probably exists. Like, if we were to look into it, I guarantee we'd find it.
We probably would find it.
And then, like, if we look at something like Cardcaptors, like, oh no, we just have a Magical Girl singular collecting magic trading cards that turn into cool weapons and things. I'm like, yeah, no. That exists.
Yeah.
But if you're to be like to me today, hey, I got the Super Nintendo emulator going, want to do some side-scrolling Sailor Moon beat-em-up, I'd be down. Because it's like, I got nostalgia glasses on this, and I feel like it's one of those things that's ripe for an actual reboot, but like a well-done reboot, not a, let's just reanimate the manga and call it a day. Like, if you're
not like one of those dark and gritty reboots like Hardy Boys or Nancy Drew.
Absolutely not, because the grit's already there. Like, it's lurking right below the surface already. Now, what I want to do is take this IP and just, like, make a Smash Bros. With it, or make a Dungeon Fighter with it. Where it's like, okay, we got these villain of the week, these different settings, these different characters with their elemental powers. Let me give me a nice brand new Turtles in Time beat 'em up with it, is what I want to see. Put some solid voice acting in it. And I'd be a happy person.
Yeah?
But yeah, it suffers from, it's nostalgic. It was pretty good. But I honestly don't think it was that good. I don't know if I would watch all of Sailor Moon again unless we were riffing it. Or slightly intoxicated.
That makes sense.
And as weird as it sounds, the newer one they did that was more authentic to the manga with a shorter runtime, their Sailor Moon Crystal with better budget animation, weirdly is worse because it's better. So, let's take Dragon Ball, for example. Original Dragon Ball is entertaining to me because it is stupid. Goku using a kettle to pour tea down the breathing straw of Murasaki Ninja, who reveals he has 7 siblings, works when it's in janky animation, with characters making snide remarks and the dub cast not taking it completely seriously. If you take something like that and then cut out a bunch of the filler and have actual actors act to the best of their ability, you lose some of the jankiness and you actually lose some of the value.
Right.
To give Dragon Ball a weird example, so I've went through Dragon Ball Kai, I've went through Dragon Ball Z. A good friend of mine prefers Dragon Ball Z because the filler arcs with Piccolo and Gohan were their favorite parts of the show. So if someone were to tell me that Netflix is doing a high-budget Sailor Moon show, I'd be like, no, you don't understand. Them using the exact same animation to throw a frisbee while Tuxedo Mask appears and is like, my work is done, and Sailor Moon says, but you didn't do anything. That's great. That's the entertainment. This is a show that deserves to be abridged, not gritty rebooted.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because not all things were good, but sometimes things that are bad make them good. And when you try and make a bad thing into a good thing, you're more likely to blow it up. Because comedy makes tragedy hit harder, tragedy makes comedy hit harder. But you can't you can't make everything into whatever the peak genre show is at the time and expect it to be good. You can't just be like, what if we take Sailor Moon and do it like Game of Thrones? No. Absolutely not. Please, for the love of God, don't do that.
Don't make Game of Thrones Game of Sailor Moon?
Game of Sailor Moon? Or
Game of Moons?
Or do a CW reboot where we have our weekly show like The Flash, where they specifically grab characters to fill a arbitrary rainbow punch card. And then have them be gritty and brooding all the time.
So many gritty reboots.
Yeah, we don't need to have the CW reboot Sailor Moon to be about drug addiction. Right? That's what would happen. We've seen these reboots happen again and again, and the reason they're so bad is because they're trying to take something that was janky and try and make it serious, and it's it was never designed for this. You're dooming yourself. They mentioned they're going to do a gritty reboot of the Powerpuff Girls, and that gives me PTSD. And I haven't even seen it.
A gritty reboot? They're going to be actual test tube babies?
Oh, no.
Or what?
I don't even want to know. But I'm sure one's overcoming a drug addiction. And another one's a victim of police brutality.
Do you think Professor X is a bad guy?
No. They're just going to make him, brooding and sad. He's going to be like, I'm sorry, I want to give you girls a good life, but... Actually, no, he's not going to be in it. Professor Plutonium is going to go missing at the start of it, and they haven't seen him in 10 years, and now they're adults just trying to live their normal lives. And they're going to do that thing they love to do, in Heroes and things, where your characters have superpowers, but that's expensive, so you have them, occasionally freak out and push someone with super strength, and then forget they have powers because they don't want to stand out, because standing out would be the worst. And it is more important to be normal at high school than to save someone from dying. You've seen that. They love doing that.
They do love doing that.
But yeah, what magical girl series have you seen? Or /read? There's one I've been reading recently in the Jump Plus app, which is about, corporate magic girls, and it's someone, in their magic girl company trying to fight monsters, but they're, for profit. It's actually really good. Could not tell you what it's called. It's like Magilume Industries or something.
I am not even really sure what magical girl animes I've seen or mangas I've read. Like,
I hate to say this, but you're probably not the target audience for that project.
probably not. But I mean, Sailor Moon is just iconic, and I have mentioned on a previous podcast where I changed the screen names for some of my coworkers at work to Sailor Moon characters, and then they're like, "Oh, what's that?" And I was like, "Oh, geez, I thought everybody knew what Sailor Moon was because that's like the iconic magical girl series." Like,
you know what I'll never get over? So when I was a kid, I immediately assumed that if I grew up to be Tuxedo Mask, I'd be the coolest, most popular guy ever.
mm-hmm.
Women aren't into Tuxedo Mask, and that makes me so sad fundamentally.
Wait,
they don't.
Women aren't into Tuxedo Mask?
No, if you just roll up in a tuxedo and offer them a rose, you're a creep now.
Huh.
It's just really disappointing that I didn't get to grow up to be someone who just rolls up in a tuxedo and presents people roses. That's all I've ever wanted to do is throw roses at people dramatically.
I'm sure you'll find the right person who will accept your roses.
I'm telling you, like, you basically, if you were to show up on your first date in a tuxedo with a rose, that is like 30 red flags.
Huh.
Just deeply tragic. But with that, do you have any closing remarks before we go into our random question of the week?
No, I'm still kind of just processing the whole, like, you're a creep if you show up overdressed.
You do. It's like if you put in above a certain amount of effort, it looks like you're trying too hard and you're trying to want something. It's almost like you have to show up with the right amount of effort, so it looks effortless. It's a whole thing. But I'm not about to give dating tips here. Although, like you said, I might just be not using the right of, like, maybe I'm just not committing. Maybe I need to actually roll up 100% Tuxedo Mask to all of my dates, and then eventually that'll work. All right.
Yeah, maybe.
So our random question this week seems to come from a particularly cruel fan, and I hope they enjoy their digital deluxe edition of the Waltz of Blades. Here's our question.
It's digital and deluxe.
This one's pretty brutal, and I hope your parents aren't watching this podcast. Our random question. Are you smarter than your parents?
Well, I mean, I'm definitely smarter than my mom. My dad is very intelligent. So I can't really say whether or not I would say can't say I'm more intelligent than him because he has a more analytical puzzle solving kind of brain, I think.
Okay.
But in terms of life skills, it's like I think I am more set up for the future now than they are, and they're in their 60s. So I don't know. Depends how you measure intelligence.
So basically you said yes in a super roundabout way, where we're like, one of my parents for sure, the other one, seems to be the answer for me to put words in your mouth.
Well, like my dad is probably more book smart than I am.
Okay.
But I don't know if he actually ended up being more street smart.
I see.
What about you? I mean, I assume your answer is a resounding yes.
So, fantastic that you know me so well. So first off, I'm definitely at this exact moment in time smarter than my dad. Like, that's a freebie.
Mm.
And then, I'm just gonna go with your how you just said, I'm just gonna say yeah. It's arrogant, but it's factual. I'm pretty sure I'm actually the most educated member of my entire family right now.
Mm.
And I am not graduated yet. So if we're going book smarts, like, here's some SATs, write a score, I'm probably winning. But as mentioned before, my skill balance is super unbalanced. This warlock I built, who is me, is a deeply, deeply flawed character. Like, for example, my mom could not build a computer or work a smartphone. But I could never successfully navigate Calgary without a GPS. I would be lost and die.
Yeah.
I could never fix a broken wall. My mom got a tile saw for her birthday and did a mosaic across her basement. So, her wisdom stats probably triple mine. Like, I'm an 8. So, it really depends on the measurement you're using. But definitely smarter than my dad. 100%. Complete faith in that one. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in with your somewhat upsetting random questions of the week.
Yeah, I hope you enjoyed this rambling episode about Sailor Moon and other animes that we compared it to.
Yeah, I pretty much just ranted about Sailor Moon the whole episode, didn't I?
And hopefully you'll also join us for our streams. Who knows what kind of games we'll be playing? Maybe we'll be playing some of those Super Nintendo. I
kind of want to set up the
games,
Sailor Moon
they
game
are,
now. That's
moderately interesting.
It's either that or we just homebrew a Sailor Moon MTG set. I mean, they're already color-coded. We could do it. We have the power. The Moon Prism power.
We could do it. That would be amazing. Sailor Moon Commander decks.
Oh, so good. So good. Alright. They're even color-coded. Like, they literally come in white, green, blue, red. And technically they have white and yellow, but we'll make one of them use swamps and we're good to go. Just arbitrarily.
Arbitrarily.
I feel like Venus would be the I think the moon actually would probably be the swamps, weirdly. And Venus would be the plains? Not sure.
Yeah, okay.
Bye.
Bye.